Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Robert Jackson. Marcel, thank you for that very kind introduction. I teach corporate law and corporate finance here at the law school, and I'm very excited to have the opportunity to share the launch of the Crown website with you today. We announced Crown about 18 months ago and the nature of our objective, but I want to back up and give you a sense for really what inspired it. What it was our sense that the debates over corporate law and corporate governance are, at the moment anyway, a little less influenced by data and a little more influenced by belief than they should be. You know, the debates over corporate governance in the last year or two especially have taken on the sense of kind of like a holy war for geeks. They sort of, there's sort of people on one side who think that it's shareholder power we should be concerned about. There's another side that comes to the defense of the corporate board. And our view and Ira's plea to me was, what does the evidence tell us? Who are the shareholders? Who are the people who are making the voting decisions in big public companies? And the answer is we don't really know. And the reason we don't really know is that until now, there hasn't been undertaken a significant large-scale data-driven project that tries to take the evidence we have out there on who shareholders are and what they care about and bring it to bear on these debates. To be sure, there's been a lot of empirical study in this area. Not hard to find good empirical work in the field. My colleague at the business school, Fabrizio Ferri, is here today. He's authored a number of studies just like that. But a lot of the data and the work that he does and the work that I've done until now has been based on hand-drawn data sets. That is, fundamentally data where we send our researchers, our assistants, and us to websites. We grab the information, we keep track of it, and we produce a study. Fab can tell you it takes a long time, it's error-prone, and it gives us a bias in our work in that we tend to look only at the biggest companies, the ones where we can get data, and not all of the companies that we're interested in talking about. So, a year and a half ago, Ira said to me, I want to bring data to bear on this. And he had, frankly, the ambition and the vision to ask me and to sit down with me and say, how do we do that? And it turns out we got lucky, because just at the moment that Ira asked me that question, there had been a series of breakthroughs in data science. Actually, to our friends in the Data Science Institute here at Columbia, this is old news, but for us it was very exciting. The idea is that you can take documents and text that use consistently identifiable patterns, and you can use statistics to understand where the data you care about resides and take it out. And what we've done over the last 18 months is develop a lab inside the law school. As far as I know, the only one at a major law school that is a data science laboratory, and this is our homepage, that spends all of its time thinking about how do we take SEC filings and key market information and make it available to researchers and the public. Now, I want to tell you, when I started this, my interest in this game was just to get the data, because I write papers for a living, and the more data I have, the more papers I can write. And I like the idea of having a whole team of people who get me data. But an important development happened about a year ago, and that was Bill McCracken taking on leadership of the center, because he added an additional challenge. He said, listen, Rob, you're going to come up with tons of data, and that's cool, but what you really want to do is give information to the world. Your challenge is to take that kind of data and make it accessible. Give people a place where if they want to figure out what the CEO of a public company makes, they can type in a ticker and get it lickety-split. Or if they want to know who were the owners of the company a quarter ago, they can put in a ticker and get it for free. And as a result of that, what we did was take a further step with our work. In addition to data extraction, we've begun to do what we refer to as data visualization. What we're going to show you today is a series of pictures that the Crown website generates automatically for all of you to see the relationships we care about in corporate governance. Now, as Marcel explained, this is an alpha version of our product. There are machines at the back, computers at the back, and we want you to go back and play around with it. I'm just going to give you a small taste of what this does. It's not a perfect product. We're still working on it. By its nature, statistical machine learning, the technology we're using to get at the data, is one that improves over time, because it evaluates documents and the text that's in them, builds a regression that figures out what I'm looking for, and grabs it, and the more I can teach it, the better it will be at extracting what we need. But we're excited enough, and we feel like we're ready to show you a little bit about Crown today. Now, I should say, this website for the Data Lab features not only Crown, which is really the centerpiece of our work, but other work we've done lately, too. Marcel mentioned a couple of these projects, and I'll talk a little bit about them before I wrap up today. But let's start really and just to give you a sense, these visualizations include things that we think you're going to like and use. Like, for example, we have a new tool that allows you to grab any merger agreement from the SEC's website, figure out what law firm represented each side, and understand what the reps and warranties look like. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But for now, let's start with Crown, the centerpiece of our work. You can click on the lab's website and it'll take you to Crown and launch this visualization. And this picture that you're seeing here is really just automatically produced by statistical machine learning that extracts information on shareholdings of the largest public companies and displays these relationships to you graphically. What you're seeing here is for the largest 50 public companies in the United States, who are their shareholders. And what the graph does is just show you the relationships between those shareholders and the companies that they own. So for example, if you want to know who are the shareholders at the center of the corporate governance world for these folks, it's the usual suspects. It's Vanguard, it's State Street, it's Bank of New York, it's all of the custodians that hold major shares in large public companies. But what we like a lot about this is not only does it give you a sense for how the largest 50 public companies are owned, and you can see that they have a lot of owners in common in the network map. It also allows you to play with the website graphically by going through. So for example, suppose we wanted to get a sense for a public company that we're interested in learning more about. Suppose we wanted to get a sense for Apple. The graph will tell us these are the owners of Apple, and if we click on Apple's logo, it'll take us to the home page of Apple. And I can't stress this enough. What's interesting about this product is this is all automatically produced. This is a machine running in the background, taking the SEC's most recent filings, using statistics to figure out what information we want and make it available to the public. Now, in the case of Apple, you can see some familiar friends. First of all, it grabs information on Apple's details, what it does, where its headquarters is, the famous logo that we all know so well. And then it lists every director or officer of that company that's ever served at Apple. You can see some old friends and famous names like Al Gore, who served on that board for some time. And what the website does is extract from SEC filings details on data we're all interested in. So to give you an example, you could figure out a little bit, if you'd like, about executive compensation at Apple. And what's happening now is the machine is looking on the SEC's filings, grabbing the proxy statements that have ever been filed for Apple, using statistics to find the data and present it to you. And you can see the history of executive compensation at Apple. It gives you every individual that we have data on, and then you can see a little spike in that graph. Everybody knows who that is, right? That's Tim Cook's famous $375 million stock award from a couple of years ago. And if you scroll down, we like that we provide this graphically to you because Bill challenged us to show you data, to give you information, not just data, but we have it in tabular format too, and researchers will be able to extract these data and use them in research. You might, by the way, have the reaction, you know, executive compensation data is already out there. That's true, but it applies only to the S&P 1500 or so. Everything I'm showing you now, we have for every public company and every public investor in the United States, because our methods, because they don't rely on hand drawing, because they don't rely on labor, can be applied to any company that's made a filing with the SEC. I said the point of the project was to figure out more about owners. That was Ira's challenge to us a couple of years ago. And what we're doing here is not only extracting the information on the companies and things like executive comp, which has been, those data have been available for some time, but we're also linking them to ownership data, which we extract from the 13F filings of major investors. So if you want to know who's investing in Apple and who likes Apple's stock, no surprise, it's our old friends Blackrock, who own a very significant stake. And we're listing for you here every investor that's reported a significant position in Apple in their 13F filings for the last quarter. And again, one thing I like about this is that you can actually click on the data and it'll take you to get further information. So let's take BlackRock, for example, and learn a little bit more about them. So BlackRock, very well-known institutional investor. You might want to learn a little bit more about who they are and what they're invested in. And here we ran up against a very interesting challenge, because those of you who know this area well and the data, you know that BlackRock doesn't file one filing with the SEC. It's not like BlackRock shows up to the SEC and says, "Hi, we're BlackRock, we manage $4 trillion, and here's all the information you want." If only it were so. No, what BlackRock does is have 2 or 3 dozen entities that file things with the SEC. So a major challenge in the project was building an algorithm, which we did, and we filed actually a patent application with the university for this particular technology that uses a series of factors, their name, the address, the details on who the entity is, to link up all of the things that are associated with BlackRock in one place. And what you see here is another relational map that gives you a sense for all of the BlackRock entities we've identified that have filings with the Securities and Exchange Commission, so you can look at all their data at once. You might say, I might want to look at them separately. You can do that too, of course. But what you might prefer to do is just understand BlackRock as a whole, and this allows you to do that. Now, we have 2 different sources of information on a shareholder like BlackRock. One is data that you probably know already, the 13F that they file quarterly, that everybody has to disclose what they own, except for Warren Buffett. But so they have the 13F on a quarterly basis. But here we've got new data that no one ever has disclosed, and that's on a form known as Form ADV. Anybody ever heard of this? Yeah? So I hadn't until I started this project. This is an amazing form. Basically, any investment advisor has to write to the SEC and disclose all kinds of stuff. Assets under management, they have to disclose how they're governed, they have to disclose who their managers are, what they own in the underlying entity, how they're paid, all kinds of great detail. You might wonder, how come researchers really never used Form ADV? And there's a simple answer. The SEC allows you to get each advisor's most recent ADV, but then when they file an update, they take down the old one and replace it with a new one. So researchers who want to see things change over time, we rely a lot on changes over time to draw inferences from data. You can't. So about a year ago, we made a FOIA request from the SEC and asked them for all the information. They refused, we appealed, and won. So we have 15 years of Form ADV data for every investment advisor who's ever filed that information. And it includes a lot of fun stuff that I want to share with you today. So we've got all those details for BlackRock. Let's start, though, with something simple, which is assets under management. Here, we're going to show you, you can just click on the web page and see the amount of assets under management that BlackRock has, and we can account for a little over the $4 trillion that BlackRock now holds, and you can get a sense both for the growth of that number over time. You are all familiar, of course, with BlackRock's explosive growth. You also can get a sense for how much of it is managed on a discretionary basis, how much is managed on a non-discretionary basis, and then, and I like this a lot, if you scroll down, you can see what individual companies they like. You can get a sense for who BlackRock is long in. Now, BlackRock being a bellwether, sorry, if you go back up, you can get a sense for their portfolio allocation if you click there on the left. And what you'll get are details about not only how BlackRock has invested across industries generally, but if you scroll down, you'll get information on the particular company. So who does BlackRock like? Well, they're an indexer, so they, like everybody else, likes Apple. They like oil, they like ExxonMobil, they like Microsoft. These are obvious ones, of course, but you might be interested in knowing a little more. For example, you might want to know, in a particular industry, who does BlackRock like? So if you grab one of the search tools that we built for you, and take, for example, just mining, you can get a sense. Here are the companies that BlackRock's long in the mining industry. Here's what they think of one as opposed to the other. And this is really rich data that we've assembled. Now, one thing you might wonder is this kind of data, is it already out there? There are some good sources for 13F data, but again, we're using here a technique that we feel it gets at a broader range of this kind of data and gives you a little more detail than you might have gotten otherwise. If you scroll back up, one thing that I really like about this information is that it allows you to see not only the holdings of the entity, but important governance details. And I'll give you my favorite example. We have evidence on what are called the disclosure reporting pages on Form ADV, which gives you information on every civil, criminal, and regulatory infraction these investment advisors have ever had. The disclosure is a little spotty, to be honest with you, but it's also very interesting. So for example, we're giving you here in a time series every event on the disclosure reporting page for BlackRock that they've ever had. Every criminal infraction, every civil infraction, every regulatory event. And if you point the mouse over any in particular, you can see what the charge was and what the resolution was. So for example, in 2003, BlackRock had a little issue with the SEC. They settled it for 80 million bucks. That's a tip for them. But they basically, you basically can see every single infraction. And right now, another senior fellow at the Millstein Center, Martin Kremers, whose work you might know, and I are working on a paper that takes these infractions and looks to see what's the relationship between this kind of behavior and things like stock ownership. Is it associated with more risk-taking, less risk-taking, longer-term investment profiles, or shorter? And that's a paper that we plan on releasing next year. You know, if you look at Blackrock, they have a pretty clean history, especially given their size. I mean, for me, if you manage $4 trillion, that's not so bad. But if you want, there's another way to go through Crown and explore what we've done. You can just use a search page where you're borrowing from Google's technology here. And you can type in the name of any investment advisor and see what kind of history they've had with the authorities. BlackRock's had a pretty good run. But let's take another example. I don't know, Goldman Sachs. And you can find out what Goldman Sachs' relationship with its regulators has been like over the last few years. They've had a little bit more trouble. So you can actually, and one thing I like about these data is that it's extremely granular. You know, for a guy like me, what I want is variation in the data because that helps me figure things out. And you can see there's a lot of different variation. In fact, you can zoom in on particular time periods and figure out, hey, what happened at Goldman in terms of these infractions during the financial crisis? You can figure out in 2008, 2009, what kind of infractions they had. This search function, by the way, applies to any company, investor, or individual who's ever had anything filed under their name at the SEC. So one thing you can do if you want to have a little fun today is go in the back and throw your or your boss's name in the search engine and see what you get. Like, you know, if I wanted to misbehave, we could put McCracken's name in there. There he is. There's how much he made. We won't spend too much time on that. There's another way you can take a look at Crown. If you click on the main menu bar, we also have made it navigable not only by search functions and by the graphs we produced, but also, you know, we wanted people to be able to just click on the three main kinds of information we had and play with the site. So you can click on the public companies page, and you can just get information on who are the highest paid individuals at every public company. If you click on any of these, it'll take you to the SEC filing that produced that information. If you scroll down a little bit, you can get a sense for the companies that are owned mostly by outsiders versus those owned mostly by insiders. You can click on any of these companies and get more detail on who the owners are that are insiders, who are the institutional investors. So you can just go to the companies page and play there. One of my favorite features on Crown is on the individuals page. As I say, we have detail on any individual who's ever filed a securities filing with the Securities and Exchange Commission. So what we've done here is built a relational map. Every name you see here is a director of a public company, and we've linked them to we've identified all the companies they serve on in terms of boards, and we've linked them to other individuals. So for example, if you pull down and take a look at cross-industry directors, here you have a list of every public company director who served on a board in more than one industry, as defined by the SEC's SIC codes. And if you highlight any of these individuals, you can get information on who they serve for boards on. And you can actually see the relationship between each director and the companies they serve on, and you can see the relationship between the companies they serve on and other directors. This might be nice for those of you who do research or who are thinking about things like board interlocks or individuals who are serving on too many boards. This is a really quick and easy way to get data on that. Something else that's fun, if you go back up and we can go to the main investors page. This graph gives you a sense for how the 20 largest investors by assets under management in the United States have allocated their shareholdings across companies. So we have here Vanguard, Blackrock, Fidelity, et cetera. And right now, what my colleague is showing you is that for Vanguard and for many of the other biggest investors in the United States, the largest holding is, of course, Apple. But if you scroll down just a bit, you'll see that there's a lot of heterogeneity. This is Exxon, which is held across a number of different investors. If you go further down, you can see Microsoft has a different ranking. And what you're getting is that company's position as among the top 20 holdings that each investor has. So what you're seeing now is how much do these different investors like General Electric, Procter & Gamble, Berkshire Hathaway, and you can get a sense for how weighted they are in each particular entity. And again, our goal here is not just to provide you with data. Those data, if you went to look for them, are available. But to give you some information, a broad sense of what these portfolios do, and we can produce this chart dynamically for any group of investors you're interested in learning more about. You know, I talked a lot about Crown, and the reason we're excited about it is because we want to get a sense for what users like you think of it. And we wanted to give you an opportunity to play with it and give us feedback. And again, anybody here and friends of the Millstein Center are welcome to become alpha users of the site. But I also thought I'd share with you a little bit of the power of this kind of a technique, because we're excited about statistical machine learning and the lab's work, not just because of the information it gives all of you, and we hope it will be helpful, but also because of the power it gives us to do interesting research. So just to give you an example, if you go back to the lab's page where all of you will be able to explore today, we have a number of different papers we've generated that use these techniques to provide new types of information that haven't been looked at in the scholarship before. So for example, the chart on the left talks about a paper called the 8K trading gap that I released about a month ago. In this paper, what we do is we look at more than 100,000 8Ks that have been filed for public companies. You know, when I was a practicing lawyer a while ago, I noticed this. When a company has a material event happen to it, they've got to file an 8K, right? But they don't have to file it right away. They've got 4 days. Now, what's interesting about that is what happens in between those days, like sort of those interesting days from a research design point of view. The answer is nobody knows, because in order to know when the event happened, you have to be able to read the text of the 8K. And 100,000 8Ks, not even Fab has research assistants, those that good. I mean, that's really a lot of work. So what we did was we took the technology that reads text in documents and we applied it to this. We found the date that the event happened and then the date the 8K was filed. We call the intervening period the 8K trading gap. Then we observed insider trading during that period. I don't know about you, my prior would have been there wouldn't be too much. Because you're kind of just asking, yeah, you're naive, Jackson. Yeah, actually, we found thousands of such trades over a very long period. And what we've done here, and in a paper I released about a month ago, we show that those trades are unusually profitable, even for insider trades. And when we released the paper and the Wall Street Journal covered it, Carolyn Maloney introduced a bill that's now on the floor of the House to ask the SEC to address the problem. In the meantime, taking up Bill's challenge to give you information rather than just data, you have a chart here that shows you every single trade during the 8K trading gap, when they occurred, and how much profit was made. We didn't name names, but if you want to know them, you can click on the links to the filings and find it out yourself. I was a little afraid of libel. Okay. So that's one example. And if you go back to the main data lab page, we've got paper after paper after paper we produce using this. For example, about a year ago, we discovered that the SEC's electronic systems for posting new filings had a bit of a delay in it. It took 3 or 4 minutes to post filings to the internet. We noticed that investors were figuring this out and trading on it. And we introduced this map that tells you over time how well the SEC's website is performing on providing the data quickly so insiders can't make these profits. The answer is they weren't so good, but then if you look in October, the Wall Street Journal wrote a story about our paper, and then the SEC got better fast. Another thing you can take a look at is tools we're trying to provide for practitioners. So just to give you an example, if you go back to the labs page, we have on the right-hand side a new tool that we're also launching today that takes thousands of merger agreements filed with the Securities and Exchange Commission, uses text analysis to identify who represented the acquirer, who represented the target, and you can search them and produce all the information you'd like to about the law firms that have written merger agreements. When I was an associate at a law firm, I always wanted to be able to call up my opponent and say, you know, your firm did this deal and used this language, and as a result, you should agree to this language, that language in my deal. If you want to pull up my old firm, Wachtell Lipton, you can see a series of merger agreements that they've counseled on. And you can explore the kinds of language they agree to in various representations and warranties. We've used text analysis to break the agreements down into their constituent parts. So that's just a taste of what we've done so far. We really encourage you to go to the back of the room and use the software and give us a sense for what you think of it. In my view, this is just the tip of the iceberg. We now have developed a very powerful tool that can take legal text and turn it into information. And it really is, in my view, the first time that folks have applied advanced computer science to this kind of a question. None of this would have been possible, it should be said, without the vision and support of Ira and Bill, and of course, all of you. Thank you so much for the chance to share this with you, and please do let us know what you think.